everybody. Welcome to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child School Edition Directors Roundtable. I'm your host and moderator, Justin Borak, host of the Scene podcast, and I'm joined by these four wonderful people to talk about the US and the UK pilot productions of the show. From Hoboken, we have Danielle, Britt, and Derek, and from the UK pilot production, we have Kennedy. I'm so excited to be talking about the show. I wanted to start it off by talking about some initial impressions. What were your first takes on learning that you were going to be selected for the pilot production of the show? How did it feel to know that you guys are kind of bringing in Harry Potter to high schools?
It was pretty heavy.
Yeah.
That's a heavy load.
Yeah.
We also found out, I think, fairly early. I don't know if it was necessarily confirmed, but we had an idea fairly early.
Mhm.
So it was excitement, but at the same time, we couldn't really do anything with the information yet.
Yeah.
So it was very hard. We were actually in the process of directing the show the prior year, and while we were directing it, we kept thinking, "Oh, but next year we're doing this. Next year we're doing this." So we had to kind of put our imagination on hold and kind of sit with it for a little while.
Yeah.
Which was actually nice.
Being in the UK, where the show started on the West End, how did it feel to be the pilot production of the high school version of the show?
It was huge.
Yeah,
It was really big. It kind of felt like the biggest thing we'd ever done.
absolutely.
And so we were so excited, and it was so hard to keep it a secret.
So obviously, Harry Potter, I'm also a Harry Potter nerd. I remember growing up and my parents brought me to every midnight release of the books at Barnes & Noble in our hometown. It was awesome. What was it like for your kids to find out that they were doing this show? Kennedy?
They were absolutely overjoyed. They were so excited. I don't think they could quite believe it. For us, it was kind of the biggest play we'd ever done, and the longest as well. But the reaction when we announced it was just everyone cheering and excited. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Danielle, how about you guys over here?
When we knew we had the go-ahead that we were going to be able to tell our students and our community, because what's so great about Hoboken is the whole town supports our theater department. We're very, very lucky. And so
Yeah.
we did a whole premiere event and kind of made it almost like a pep rally would be for
Yeah.
like a sporting event, because I said, when are you going to ever have a chance to do something like
That's
that?
so
Right.
fun.
I had the Broadway licensing, sitting over here on the stage, and we had our production team sitting on this aspect of the stage.
God.
And we had every production team member come down the aisles and cheering for them, like they were going to be the person doing this job for the production. And then we had a slideshow,
Yeah.
and a couple of the producers from Harry Potter were here. And at the very end, we had a countdown, and then it revealed the logo of the show. And then you could just see the hundreds of people in the audience that had come that wanted to know what the show was,
Yeah.
standing up and screaming, all different ages, of people. So that was really fun, I felt.
Yeah. So obviously the announcement was huge. The reactions were huge. I want to talk about the budgets of the show. How did doing Harry Potter compare to the classic show in your season?
For us, it was relatively the same. We're given a budget per production here by our Board of Education. And then we also always do additional fundraising for additional items that we wind up realizing we need as we get scripts. And I think that process was similar for us than any other scripts, because until we're physically working on the stage, sometimes we'll get an idea of oh, we need a rolling staircase now, or, oh, we need this. And it's not something 6 months ago without physically being on the stage that we thought of. So we use our fundraising money towards purchasing those additional items that aren't pre-planned and already placed within our.
Absolutely. Kennedy?
We don't get a budget for kind of extracurricular shows or activities. So we had to go and very sweetly ask our head teacher how much we were allowed. But the thing with us was we wanted to make it affordable and still do the show justice.
Yeah.
So we had to think, right, how can we make this look as good, but maybe be doing some stuff ourselves, or
One of my favorite things, and I'm so excited to talk about, is casting. You're casting Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. What was it like coming into a high school and casting with your casting pools all these major crucial roles? How did you go into that?
We went in completely blind. The interest we had in the show was huge, so we actually had the biggest turnout to audition that we'd ever had.
Yeah.
So for our school, over 350 students turned up. And we wanted to get as many in as possible.
Mhm.
The only thing we had was we did height. So the older
Or the taller
Yeah.
ones? Yeah.
and the obviously the younger students,
Yeah.
the shorter ones. Just so it could make sense to the audience a bit more with the family dynamics.
But so when you guys, obviously the cast size in Harry Potter is super flexible, which is really, really wonderful. What was it like casting for the Hoboken production?
I mean, it was nice because, like Kennedy said, we have both she and us. We have so many kids that audition. Like we had about the same, like 300, maybe 350 kids that audition. So it was nice that we were able to give so many students not just a chance to be in the show, but a chance to have lines in the show or a chance to be featured in the show in some way. So I think that was nice. That was refreshing. Coming back to what you said though about the cast and how many people are in the show, it can be confusing for the audience when there's, 30 something characters in a show, especially when they're all played by people that are relatively the same age.
Yeah.
So again, we had to, think, we're casting within this pool of kids that are younger for the younger kids. We're casting within this pool of kids that are maybe juniors and seniors to play the adults, which made it actually a little easier.
What advice would you give to someone going into casting their students?
I liked that. I think the day of casting, I was like, we should double cast the leads because we do have 350 kids auditioning.
I feel like if you are directing this show, kind of look in the cracks of the script.
So many gifts.
Yeah.
This script gives you so many gifts to be,
Yeah.
and so much
Be
music.
creative.
Obviously, Harry Potter is such an iconic name. It's such a versatile story, and the casting is so flexible. Can you talk about who played Harry Potter in your show?
Yeah, so we actually had quite a lot of our older boys who are kind of our traditional football players, or soccer, I think you call it, soccer players. And he does drama, but he'd never done a show before.
Oh, really?
No musicals, no plays, nothing. So this was his first kind of public performance.
Yeah.
And it's a 2-hour long show. It's
Yeah.
not kind of a
He's playing
60,
Harry
70 minute-
Potter.
Yeah. And he completely smashed it. So, but his parents didn't believe that he'd got the role. So he came and he asked us, he was like, oh, can you phone my parents? Because they didn't believe
Until
me."
That's amazing.
I think this show also lends itself really well to if you have students who are torn between wanting to be in set crew or be in the show, there's a way for them to actually do both in this show because there are so many scene transitions. You can have your set crew kids dressed as kids at Hogwarts, moving the set around on stage in full view of the audience. Because we said to ourselves, we really didn't want to have too many blackouts in the show because we thought it would really slow the show down. So we were like, everything is going to happen in front of the audience. Just put everyone in a row. And I think it's also great for the kids that are in the show. Like if you are cast in the show, now you have to learn about being a crew member. Because
Yeah.
a lot of kids that are in a show, they audition, grades 9 through 12. They're always in the show. They don't necessarily understand or have the respect I think that they need for what the backstage crew does. And
Yeah.
the show kind of gives them that.
And to piggyback off of that, I think if you are a school that has a crew, maybe there's a couple students in that crew that have always been nervous to audition or never thought about like wanting to be on stage because it seemed intimidating. And so now in a show like this, they're getting that opportunity to like be a
be on
part
the
of the
stage.
ensemble.
Yeah.
And then it might open up their aspect too of theater holistically. So I think it could go either way.
That's
and
such
then
a
maybe
smart move,
a couple
yeah.
of those students might audition then for a show in the future because they had that moment on stage that didn't seem so intimidating to them.
If a kid is wanting to audition because Harry Potter is such a huge name, they're a huge fan, but they're intimidated by the stage, creating maybe a small crew for your production might be a really good way to ease somebody into the performance element. I want to shift to Kennedy before we get off casting. Were there any things that you did to help the flexibility of the show or the cast or anything like that throughout your production?
Yeah, so we toyed with the idea of keeping it really small
Yeah.
and just having kind of the main characters and then double casting.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of based on audition day and how much interest we had.
How many you
people-
guys had come out?
Yes.
Yeah.
That we wanted to get as many people in as possible. So
Absolutely.
we also did a non-speaking ensemble,
Oh, sweet.
and we did it that way.
Derek and Kennedy, you guys directed the pilot productions in the UK and the US. What was it like as a director going into the pre-process of this show? What were the first things that you guys thought of directing this? Kennedy, you want to take it?
One of my big things was, wow, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
where am I going to do this? We don't have a beautiful theatre like this one.
Gorgeous, by the way.
We have a hall. And it has a skylight, so you can't do a blackout.
Oh my
So-
gosh.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we had a lot of challenges that we were like, right, come
Yeah.
on, how are we going to make this show our own?
Mhm.
So sitting down and kind of discussing all of those, and especially kind of the magic and illusions.
Yeah.
Again, we don't have the technical budget. We don't have a full
Yeah.
blackout. There's a lot of things that we needed to circumvent to be able to make all of that happen.
Yeah.
And I think what we came up with was pretty good. So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Derek, how about going into it as from a director's perspective?
I think it was actually a challenge that I needed. Because I think sometimes, and maybe other high school theater directors will agree, you kind of get into the grind of directing a show every year at a school, directing a show maybe that's been done, thousands of times before. Like you're directing Guys and Dolls, you're directing shows that, are kind of just a
That are
lot of
done
people
often.
have done them.
Yeah, of course.
And it was nice to, as overwhelming and intimidating as it was, I was also excited to do it because I said, I think I'm at the point where I can do this. I think
Yeah.
that it's a challenge that I want. And I know there's like Kennedy said, there's a lot of magic and illusions in it. And I don't want people who are considering the show to be hung up on the magic and the illusions, because at the end of the day, it is a very human story. And I really had to remind myself of that. Like when the kids would leave at the end of rehearsal, I would say to myself, okay, but at the end of the day, this is a story about friendship and this is a story about parents and kids,
Yeah.
which everyone can relate to.
I do want to say something that maybe you guys weren't able to have, but really soon Broadway Licensing is releasing the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child Director's Guide to help upcoming schools and programs figure out some tips and tricks to directing the show, which I think we can all probably say would be extremely helpful. we wish
Where
we
was
had
it?
I know. But it's going to be a really helpful resource. Brittany, being the choreographer of the Hoboken production,
Yeah.
how did it feel going in? What were you thinking of before the show started? What were you thinking of throughout the rehearsal process?
Oh, I love when I can break outside your basic jazz hand step ball change.
Mhm.
So this was my jam.
Mhm.
And the music's so beautiful. I do love Imogen Heap. So the fact that the music stayed the same, it was trimmed here and there, but I was very excited
Yeah.
because I just sit and listen to the soundtrack over and over and over until I see something, and then I see it, I put it on paper, and then I try and put it in their feet and see if it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very excited to put my movement in, and the kids really worked their butts off.
We solved a lot of our transition challenges and our magic and illusion challenges with kind of physical theatre and movement.
Oh,
So
okay,
we really went for that tack.
I loved the staircase too, which is not
Ballet.
movement as far as maybe with your bodies, but it's movement within set pieces that does give that dance feel, which I
Mhm.
think as we kind of already talked about too, could allow some students that maybe aren't the strongest dancers to be able to learn more about rhythms of songs and how to count different beats or different things, because
That was a beautiful
they're
number, too.
moving. It was one of my favorite moments of the whole show, to be completely honest. And I think it falls into that same category because it allows more students to have opportunities to shine.
Yeah.
I didn't have staircases. Did you guys have a staircase?
Yeah.
Kind of last minute addition. We kind of forgot about the staircases 2 weeks before.
We didn't forget about the staircases.
I forgot about the staircase.
I didn't push for them to be made until I came in and put them together.
But we actually just happened to have, I think we had just 2 staircases in our prop room that were the exact same size. And I was like, what are the odds?
I like that we've naturally kind of shifted into scenic design, which is also, you're probably going to flip the table again. Soon there will be a Harry Potter Cursed Child scenic design guide.
Of course
that
there
people are
will.
gonna be-
Of course there will. Yeah.
that people are going to be able to order and get, and hopefully it'll help them with some tips and tricks. But from scenic design standpoint, obviously it feels like something that is a massive thing to take on.
If we could go back, we would have changed the most about our production too, because
Mhm.
everything moves really fast. And we
Did not think about that.
built large walls because we wanted height, and we wanted, for even like the train scene to have, Albus and Scorpius to be able to go up and look like they're escaping the train and this and that. And a couple moments with Delphi happened up there, but I think we would have rethought some of that aspect too. So I think it's almost better to make it more simple, maybe, and
Yeah.
we went a little bit maybe too large in our thoughts.
I think if you're directing this or you're designing this or you're working on this, you should almost like have two different lists and think, what do I want and what do I need? Like, what do I need to tell this story? And what do I want to tell the story? And tackle your needs first, because
Even make a third list and go break it even further down and go, what can I barely have to get by and find a balancing act?
But it was nice because we kind of prioritized space and having stage space. So we just had a projector and then some brick walls. We kind of went for a Great Hall vibe for the whole of the audience and the set. So as they came in, there was, some fake candles and a bit of magic. And that kind of set the scene for the whole play. I think that it was just set in that magic world.
I actually think that, especially if you're a school, no matter what your budget is, no matter what size stage you have, I'm always an advocate for not, like, really pushing yourself to not, I don't want to say be inspired by, you should definitely be inspired by, but what's being done professionally. Because if you look at the budget of a Broadway production versus your budget, no matter what school you're at, your budget's going to be less. So I feel like it actually is more admirable when you have your students involved and you ask your students, what do you think the audience might want to see? Or when you think of this show as a whole, what is iconic to you that maybe, like you said, treating the space like the Great Hall, we kind of did the same thing too. We thought, what are the most iconic locations in this show? So you have the Great Hall, you have the train station, and we kind of took that imagery of a train station and a school with books, bookshelves, brick walls, like ivy, things like that you might find at a school. And that's kind of just what we focused on and what we used. And we created basically a unit set that just moved a little bit. And I strongly recommend
Simplify.
doing that. Yes.
What did costuming look like going into it?
We create a spreadsheet always for our productions, and we list each character and who's playing them and get all like their measurements and stuff, and then create almost like image boards of like things that inspire us that we like for that character, by finding just not images from the show itself, but images of just if we want to dress this person in purples, like what does that mean to us? And so we'll, as a production team, we'll all kind of add in our different images, and we have two really amazing production team members that really spearhead that.
Yeah.
And I would say the one thing I think that could have been or that was helpful, but maybe we should have got a little sooner too, was if you're choosing to use capes and things for the dances, I think that might be something you want to prioritize, because that really, it's like capeography is just kind of like throughout the whole show. If that's like the one costume piece you have, like even if you're just dressed very simply underneath and just like black pants and a white button-up shirt, and that's your costume, and the parents are providing that for the student themselves, like the cape is probably the one thing you want to have.
Seeing the show, the capes are really a great way to get across some of the illusions, some of the transitions, all of that. How did you guys take on, maybe start with Kennedy, what did you guys do with the capes? Did you use them in the way that you saw them in the professional production? Where did you buy them? Did you make them? What happened?
We started off thinking that we were going to make them. And then we decided we were going to buy them. Because you can get like really kind of cheap packs of 10 and just simple black. So we just got loads of those. And they work in a myriad of ways. So you can have, a purple cape for someone and a green cape for Delphi. And also in the UK, we have uniform. So they're already in their costume.
That's so convenient.
So we just bought a couple of ties.
Oh, man.
That was so hard for us to get the uniforms together.
It's so interesting. If like a private school or someone in the U.S. has uniforms, this might be a really great choice of show to do. That's so cool. Yeah. What did you guys, this question can really go to anybody. What was it like going into lighting for this show? Did you guys use it in a way where you're like, oh, I know this illusion is going to be able to be covered by the lighting? Or did you guys look at lighting as a fully separate thing within the design process?
I feel like when you're working with kids, high school kids, it's very difficult to get them to hit their place on stage that they need to be consistently night after night, which is fine because they're still learning. So I think that we wanted to make sure that any illusion that we had could be done, whether it was lit in a certain way or not. If it was lit a certain way and it just happened to work out that night, great. But if it didn't and the kid was, 2 feet to the left, it would still look cool. If you just focus on keeping things consistent, I think in every aspect of the show, just keeping things consistent, once you get that language of the show and you get that, when we're in the Great Hall, this is what the lighting looks like. So every time we come back to the Great Hall, this is what the lighting looks like. It helps not only the kids, it helps the audience understand where we are. So it almost was, when I was working with my lighting designer, kind of creating a language of the show and what the show would look like. But I don't want people to get too caught up again in like the magic of the show, because it is such a human show. So just kind of keeping the light natural. It isn't necessarily a negative thing. It actually kind of brings more reality to what seems like it's kind of this very fantastical show. So I think you could do the show with, kind of very theatrical lighting, or if you just turn the lights on and off. I mean, it will work regardless.
I want to go around the table and I want to hear your favorite prop that you had in your show. Was there something that really stuck out as like a favorite thing? I'm going to start with you, Danielle.
Even though I was scared of them, I think it was our Dementors.
Oh, really?
She was terrified of
I don't watch scary
Naturally.
movies. Like I'm just not into any. Halloween's not my favorite time of year. But our scenic designer, who is one of our art teachers at our middle school, spent multitudes of days and hours building these Dementor puppets that kind of sat on the shoulders of students, and then they hovered and like went over the audience.
Not just hovered, they were like 5 feet off their shoulder.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
It's a total of like
the
10 feet.
facial like features of those, and then she made these large hands that like just with sticks, like they could have coming out of just like black cloth.
She paper mache.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
but I mean, I had to kind of do this like every time at the end of Act 1 because they were just so terrifying.
You know you've made a good Dementor if the head of the drama program at your school is still scared of it.
I did a lot of crossings in the very beginning, and I had one of our students who played Snape. So he was just a regular student mover in Act 1. And he did this cross, and I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you had a newspaper here and it like moved, like one of the new moving. He's like, oh yeah, that would be cool. And then we started like shooting off ideas. This was literally probably week 1, right? And then I want to say, when did he come in? Maybe 2 weeks before tech. He came in, he's like, hey, I have my newspaper. By the way, I said that. I said, that's cool. He's like, I could make it. I went, cool. And then I moved on. And I'm like, we're never going to get this. He come in, he had a newspaper, and he had a Quidditch on the front, and he had a little Quidditch player, and it moved back and forth, and you couldn't see. It was a puppet work.
Oh
that
my
he
God.
created. Like our students, we threw a lot of our props to our
It
students.
was so cool.
It was so cool, and it came on, and I had him upstage here, and I was like, screw it, you're coming up to the front, and there's going to be a big light on you. And it wasn't like one of those things of, and here's our newspaper. It was, if you saw it, you saw it, and it was a wonderful little Easter egg.
Yeah.
And it was my favorite.
I think teachers and directors might be surprised how, even if they're considering the show and they're saying to themselves, I don't really have like a reliable student that can do this. I think if you choose something like Harry Potter, that is such an iconic title, you'd be surprised how many kids you get that actually are involved or want to be involved. Same thing with us. We had a couple of students, one in particular, who designed so many of the props, and they just, looking back, I mean, whenever I see photos of the show, I'm like, oh my gosh, that prop is like beautiful.
I'm going to shift into the biggest segment of this roundtable. And hopefully everyone watching has been waiting for this. We're going to talk about illusions and magic. It's something that everybody thinks about when it comes to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. It's something that, I knew I just saw the Broadway show a couple days before I came to this, and I was like, oh my gosh, how did you guys do it? And you did, and that's so amazing in a bunch of different ways. So let's start from the beginning. when you guys learned you were going to be the pilot productions of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child School Editions, when you thought about the illusions and magic, what were your first thoughts?
I think my first thoughts were everything that I couldn't do. So I was like, okay, no fire,
Mhm.
no blackouts. So then kind of going, right, how are we going to make this our own and make the magic, and
Mhm.
just looking at writing down all the illusions that are in the script and then trying to come up with loads of ideas as to how we do them. And
Or like breaking them down as like a side list. So you're like, this is how I can, like, you're trying to find solutions, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways that you could do each and every one of them, just depending on kind of your style or your directorial vision. I've said we did a lot of kind of music and physical theatre based things.
Yeah.
As overwhelming and intimidating as it was, I was also excited to do it because I said, I think I'm at the point where I can do this. I think
Yeah.
that like it's a challenge that I want. And I know there's like Kennedy said, there's a lot of magic and illusions in it. And I don't want people who are considering the show to be hung up on the magic and the illusions, because at the end of the day, it is a very human story. And I really had to remind myself of that. Like when the kids would leave at the end of rehearsal, I would say to myself, okay, but at the end of the day, this is a story about friendship and this is a story about parents and kids,
Yeah.
which everyone can relate to. So whenever I would find myself getting a little overwhelmed with the spectacle of the show, I would come back to, what is this really about? I've directed shows like this before. I've directed shows about friendship. I've directed shows about families. I have friends. I have family. So like, I can do this. So I
Yeah.
think it's important that directors know that while it is a big show, it's doable. It's very doable.
Boiling it down to the story so it doesn't feel so intimidating.
I'm going to go through the script. I'm going to write down all the magic that when I come to a show, I go, this is the movie magic I want, and you can tell me what I can have.
Mhm.
So I'm like, these are all the things I think are important. These are the moments that we should really work on. And then he wrote down his moments, and then we went from there. We had a lot of our students help with the magic.
Which I think was so smart.
Yeah. You almost have to.
So to pass it to the kids, I think is just like a really important thing. Again, it also, just like the music, just like the props, it gives kids who are interested in something like maybe magic, who every year you do a show and there's no real place for them, it gives them kind of a spot to interject their creativity. Give yourself more time than you've ever given yourself before. So really look at your schedule and just choose maybe 3 or 4 days where you take your list of all of your illusions that you want in the show and test them out outside of rehearsal. Test them out outside of blocking, because you will block your scene, you will get to that spot, you will try it, and you will realize that it does not work the way you thought it was going to work, and then it will halt your rehearsal. So I think, you get 10 of your creative kids together, you come into the room and you say, let's try plan A for this illusion. Try it. Does it work? Does it not work? Then try plan B. And eventually you'll get it. You'll get some version of it. And that's kind of what we did. I would come in during my theater classes during the day, and we would work on illusions during the day so that we didn't have to do it during rehearsal time.
Yeah.
Also, going back to keeping things simple, I am the person that's like, and then we can do this, and then they can fly in, and if we have these strings and we pull it. And then I'm like, Derek, for the time turner, we could do this. He's like, oh, I just bought it on Amazon. I'm like, or we could do that. Like, let's just do that. Like, that's cool. Like sometimes not beating yourself up and just getting something simple is key as well.
I do like that both pilot productions, it looked like before you guys started the process, you took out a notebook and you wrote down all the illusions you're going to have to do. And I think just from our conversation throughout today, we've learned that a lot of these design elements are the solutions to those. I mean, from taking a photo of the stage and making it a cardboard to having like your students make those wands or doing those types of things, it is really, when you look at everything separately, it can be a beast. But when you look at everything together and you work as a team and collaborate to try to solve problems, you actually find a lot more solutions than you expect, which is really, really cool. I'm going to ask Kennedy to tell a story that I've told, how many times? Like 10 times today? I've told so many people about how you've gotten around Moaning Myrtle because it literally blew my mind to the point where I was like showing my roommates when I was watching your I wasn't able to obviously come to your guys' productions, but I was able to watch some videos of them. And when I saw what you guys did with Moaning Myrtle, I truly thought you might have been a wizard, which I was like, oh, that makes sense. She's going to get the pilot production because she's the one wizard in existence. But can you tell, I want you to tell everybody what you guys did with Moaning Myrtle because it was so smart.
So we had a set of identical twins audition, Anya and Elise, who are fantastic. And it's just so happens it's great that they were identical. We had them at different ends of the stage, and one came on, the other one
Top
came on
it.
with the other one off. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my favorite one is the Expelliarmus spell of just having one kid point their wand and one kid throw their wand. That just
Yep.
became
It's very simple
it's
and
so
good.
satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they love it as well. They
It-
just want to play
Yeah.
one battle.
We had that problem. Like, put the wands away.
It really is like finding those super simple solutions that you're like, can it really be that easy? And it can.
I don't think there's any high school that can't do it. I think there are some high schools that could probably do it in a way that it's visually more interesting, visually more exciting. On the flip side, there are other high schools who can do it and really hone in on the emotional aspect of it or the dramatic aspect of it. So you kind of have to look at what you have at your school and what resources you have, what kids you have, what they're good at, and think, okay, I'm going to do this show and this is the direction I'm going to take with it. I'm going to take it in this very focusing on the acting, or I'm going to take it focusing on the illusions or focusing on the set. Just so many things you could do with it.
That's such an amazing way to put it. And I think it's so important to know that like this show, there is no limitations when it comes to resources or budget. You shouldn't let this beast of a show scare you off because there's so many ways to look at it. I will say, Brittany, do not flip the table. As as well as a director's guide and a scenic guide, we are also coming out with another add-on that is the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child Illusions Guide. I know it would have probably been super helpful for the pilot productions to do, but it's going to be full of tips and tricks to get around those. I mean, you guys had a really creative experience that I think a lot of productions are hopefully going to get also, but they're also going to hopefully have this add-on guide that's going to help them maybe through some of those. But it's so important to know that even without all of those guides, you guys were able to find solutions to all of these things.
100%.
I want to start winding into these closing segments and these closing thoughts. This is a more basic question for the table. What was the best part of producing Harry Potter and the Cursed Child?
I think it's always seeing the growth of the students throughout the process of a show. And this show specifically for us, I think allowed a lot of students that normally haven't had leads or moments to shine. It gave them moments to shine. And so to see them be so proud of their work and to see an audience be so receptive and almost like I said, a character in the show because it's almost like they're at a sporting event. I mean, the Quidditch is there too, but like they're cheering and they're oohing and eyeing and whoa, and you can hear different aspects of their reactions to things as it's happening. And I think just like for all theater, it brings your community together, right? This was like a culminating thing of multitudes of years of just like working towards creating the best theater experiences you can for your students, right? And so when every child is in a production and they feel safe and seen and heard and they want to be there every single day and they're crying when the show is over because they know they can't come back tomorrow and like be at rehearsal, then you did something right. And I think that like this show does that because there's so many opportunities for every student to feel like they're an equal participant.
I have a couple of things. So my cast were very from kind of all different cliques or all different interests. And one student said before the first night, if it wasn't for the show, I wouldn't have known most of you. And they called it the bond. And named by them, they're all in a group chat and they all have the bond. And that's which was just incredible to see because they are now the most unlikely of friends. And then I had some parents come up to me after they'd seen their son in the show and they hadn't wanted him to take drama or theatre as an exam. So they actually thanked me and said, thank you so much for supporting him and telling us to let him do drama because what we've just seen, we're so proud of him. And that moment really sticks with me because he wouldn't have had the opportunity if we'd have not done this show.
It's talked about so many things, but I think it all comes down to three. Keep it simple. Don't be scared, because you can do it with no matter what your budget, no matter what your resources are. And it's just a story about parents and kids and friendship.
Mhm.
Focus on that and it'll all work out. Derek, Brittany, Kennedy, Danielle, thank you so much for being here at the Harry Potter Cursed Child School Edition Directors Roundtable. I was so happy we got to talk about all this stuff. Hopefully we eased the minds of some people and we got some people excited to bring the magic to their school. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to license the show, go to licensecursed.child.com or check out Broadway Licensing. And yeah, I was going to say we'll see you next time.